So I have been talking about the measuring stick and different ways that we measure our lives, whether it's somebody else's standards, expectations, or our own failures. So moving on from that just a little bit, I want to talk about the importance of healing. So a lot of times our measuring sticks come from a place of being unhealed. It comes from something in our past that has taught us that that is the correct measuring stick to use in our lives. So my measuring stick of having to be perfect and earn people's approval and only being worthy of love based off of what I do came from my childhood. The measuring stick of measure myself by my failures came from ideas placed in me from childhood. Over the period of my life, I have learned that I have to heal from the past. Now, you might have had a good childhood, and that is great. I mean, mine wasn't the worst, but it definitely wasn't the best. But a lot of times we still have baggage. And maybe it's not even from childhood. Maybe it's from nothing anybody else did. Maybe it's just from ideas that you got. I mean, the media is all the time cramming things down our throats on ways we're supposed to be measuring ourselves. You know, you're not thin enough. You're not pretty enough. You can't have gray hair. You can't have wrinkles. You can't look old even if you're old. Like, you have to measure up to this certain standard. Girls have to be independent, but at the same time, they have to be feminine and loving. I mean, all of these different measuring sticks are given to us as ways to show that we will never measure up. So, I just wanted to remind you today the importance of healing. I am in counseling for some of the things that have happened in my past to help me heal. Now, I didn't start my healing process in counseling. My healing process actually started on my knees with Jesus. He began the healing process. It's happened in stages. It doesn't happen all at once. So I didn't just magically hit a button and suddenly I was all healed from everything I'd ever walked through. As a matter of fact, God has gradually led me through different things, from healing from my divorce to healing from different things from my father, and now healing from things from my mother. So it's just various things, and it comes in stages. Now, healing is important because it doesn't just affect you, it affects all those around you. It affects those you're connected to. So I'm going to give you a bit of an example. So when I was a teenager, if you would have told me, or even as an adult, if you would tell me that I look like my mother or act like my mother, I would have gotten so offended. Now I probably still wouldn't be that happy about it, but I wouldn't write you off, okay? But back then, when I was a teenager, 13, my daughters were 13 and 17. If you would have said that to me, that I looked like my mom, or I acted like my mom, or I reminded them of my mom, I would have gotten so offended. I wouldn't have talked to you again, probably. It would have really hurt me. Fast forward to now. I'm almost 40. I have a 13-year-old daughter. I have a 17-year-old daughter. I have more kids than that, but these are the two that was with me. They were standing beside me, and there was another individual there, and the individual looked at my daughters and said, "Wow, you look just like your mom." And my daughters did not get offended. Instead, they said, "Thank you," and they meant it sincerely. My daughters don't take it offensively if someone tells them that they act like their mother or they look like their mother. Instead, they take it as a compliment. What's the difference? What's changed? Well, there was a healing process. And as I walked through a healing process, it made me into a different person, a person that my children could be proud of being associated with. It gave me a version of myself that even though I'm not completely healed, I'm healed enough that they are willing to be called to be similar to their mother and it not be a slap in the face. I know sometimes we think that we've waited too long to be healed and we can't ever be to that place where people notice the difference, but that's simply not true. I didn't start on this healing process when my kids were super young. I mean, some of them are because, I've got them stretched from ages 6 to 19. But my older kids, they remember the other version of mom. They remember it. And I've told y'all before in this podcast that we've had a conversation before where they've said, well, Mom, that's just not who you are anymore. We don't see that person in you anymore, that person who was controlled by anger and constantly getting upset and yelling and throwing things and just being a horrible example of what a person should be in general. They don't see that in me because God took me through a healing process. And as God healed me and He unpacked some junk, I call it a suitcase. So your suitcase starts to fill up the minute you're born from life experiences. And some are good. Some are, good memories. Some are those mementos that you bring back from vacation. And then some are bad, like the dirty laundry, the socks, the trash that gets thrown in there. The problem is when you leave the bad in there with the good, it begins to taint the good. So every good memory gets attached to something stinky. So you might have the nicest souvenir shirt out there, but when it's been cuddled up to your stanky socks all, over the years, it starts to smell like stanky socks. That souvenir shirt's now tainted. The good news is you can begin to start cleaning out the junk. I would recommend a counselor, a pastor, a mentor, somebody who has a biblical wisdom that can walk you through the process. Begin cleaning out the dirty, because then it begins to freshen up the good. So now I can look back, and even though I've went through some things in my life, I can look back and I can see the good. One of the things God did when He walked me through healing from my divorce, it's a process, and I might make another podcast to go through the whole process, but towards the end of the process, I had to go back and tell God the good things that had happened, which was very difficult because in order to have the courage to leave that marriage, I had to only remember the bad. That was my coping mechanism, But to go back and look at the good, what it did was after God had healed me from the bad. That's after I had told Him all the bad things that had happened, all the bad memories that I had, and all the bad things that I had done, and all of the things that had led to this point of the death of my marriage. And I had mourned this loss of myself, this loss of this union. And what had happened was after that, God had me go back and remember the good. Because when all the bad was taken out and healed from, I was able to look back at my ex-husband and say, oh, well, it wasn't all bad. And so I'm able to tell my kids, well, your biological father's not all bad. There's good aspects to him. He has a great sense of humor, and he's really fun at times. There's good things. It wasn't all bad. So take time to heal. It's never too late. Even if your kids are out of the house or you don't have kids, take the initiative to heal. Because you want somebody to be able to say somewhere along the line, hey, I'm glad you associate me with so-and-so because I truly think they're amazing. I truly think they're a good person. When you get to that point, you realize that all the hard work of walking through healing was worth it. That it never was just about your healing. A lot of times we don't heal because we don't want to refill it. We don't want to walk back through it. And I totally understand that. Trust me, I've had to walk through some hard things going through my healing process. Some things that I didn't want to remember, but now that I'm on the other side and I'm still walking through some of it, but I'm on the other side for so much of it, I see that my healing wasn't about me. It was, but it wasn't. I'm on a journey for peace and joy and all the things that God wants to give me in this healing process that I'm working towards, but it's not just about me. I've got Sunday school kids who look up to me. I've got my children who look up to me. I've got my husband that I have to be healed for, to be the person that they need me to be. And knowing that my daughters don't look at it as an insult to be like me, To me, that's the greatest compliment I could ever receive. To me, that makes it worth all the times I had to spend on my knees, the hours I spent pouring my heart out to God, the many journals that I have filled as I have worked through all of these issues and traumas in my mind. So today, do the hard work. Start today. Because it's worth it. And it's not even just about you. You don't know what your healing will do for somebody who's watching you. And trust me, if you're alive and breathing, there's somebody watching you. You are setting an example. So are you going to set the example that it's okay to live an unhealed life because it's too hard to do the work? Or are you going to set the example that healing is totally necessary and totally worth it?